Okay, work sessions in session. Chad?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and councilors, and thank you all for being here. I appreciate that. You've been working all day today too. We're focused on the public safety building project tonight's meeting. Since our last town hall, we've received valuable feedback from the community, and this is an opportunity to discuss and respond to those questions and concerns. Our architect and project managers are here. I see Ian here, Chris with Fox Group, John with FFA. With that group, and then here in the council chambers, along with some residents, we've got Mark McFadden, our public works director. We're here in the back corner. You guys can't see him there. We've got Fire Chief Josh Como, Police Chief Josh Gregory. Our architect and project managers still provide some technical details to help clarify anything that's still unclear. And I figured that what we could do is use this time to align as a group and surface any remaining issues, especially anything councilors are hearing from the public. I encourage you to bring forward any of that feedback so that we can address it directly and then have a good discussion. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I think we could just dive in. The mayor provided some of the questions that he had in advance, and I got those to Ian and John. I'm hoping, and Chris, and I'm hoping you folks saw those. Great, and then I wrote down a few more that are going around. And again, to kind of give you as an appetizer, I wanted to see how the online survey was going and the voting progressing so far. I've had questions about why we can't just upgrade and expand the current fire station. I've had questions about combining with Seaside Fire, which I don't think we could get very far on tonight, but we have some opinions, of course. Are there any other viable options at this point? What about polling the community? Big concerns about the cost of the foundation. Can we break that down a little bit to see what's driving that expense? Is the public works building truly a critical infrastructure building? Are we building it like that? Is that coming in on the or increasing the expense? And is there any other way to do a more affordable solution with this piece of land that we have? The mayor's questions were, if the community selects the combined solution, where would the police department and other departments go in the meantime? What are the estimated costs to reallocate the administrative staff? I found another foundation question. Will the public works building be construction as critical infrastructure? We got that. And then can we get a segmented cost estimates for each component? Some people, I'll go into detail about that, but City Hall, Police Department, Fire Department, Public Works, as separate prices. And what other factors are contributing to the overall high cost of the project? And was remodeling the existing building ever considered? Are some of the questions that I've collected between last Monday and today. So with that, I thought we could have an open discussion about those questions and anything else that might be on your mind and you've heard that or some kind of get a pulse of the community and to get out any other questions that we can spend some time figuring out so we can answer to the community. So to end up, I think I'm going to open it up to the city council and actually John and Ian, maybe, oh, and there's Phil as well. Maybe we could talk about I don't know if this is a good time, but to talk about the survey results as well.
Yeah, that's my thought. We do have a quick slides that we could run through of just the summary of the process we engaged with the community. Most of you had heard it already because you attended most of the meetings with us. But yeah, we have the results of the voting at the last one, as well as we were able to put together some graphics based on your questions of just showing the breakdown of costs in a little further detail.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Yeah, it sounds. Just go ahead.
Can you guys go ahead and turn on the sharing?
Okay, Miss Christie, we'll get that for you. And you're there.
All right.
So I'll kick things off by just saying, I'll kick things off. And Phil, you want to just go back to the first couple community slides?
Oh, you want to go
I'm
to
actually really impressed with the community overall, because we did get 50 to 60 people turn out at every one of the meetings. So at that first meeting, when we talked to the community, right, we really did set the stage. It's about getting consistent turnout, that we're really signing up for a process throughout. And seeing that consistent engagement that didn't fall off was pretty great to see. But the first meeting, I do think we set the stage for that. This is the site that's under evaluation. The charge really was, how do we best evaluate that current site and find the most value for the community in the development? And functionality and practicality were those key points we heard kind of at every single meeting throughout the process. If you go to community meeting number 2, this was the one where, so our structural engineer did produce a report addressing the existing facility and their analysis and improvements. And we had them attend this meeting to present their report and talk with the community and get a lot of questions and feedbacks on their analysis. And what we got from that discussion really was that it's not practical to improve the existing facility, that you're sinking a lot of cost into the existing building without addressing your significant kind of operational concerns, as well as the soil improvements there make it even more challenging. And this was an awesome meeting, I think, just to get the 52 people we had participating in the meeting to go space by space. We went through each of the spaces, like the bunk rooms, lobby, apparatus bay, and really just explained each of the size, the need, and answered questions at that time, really because we understood the size of the facility was going to equate to dollars, and we wanted to make sure we had an open conversation with the community about size and alignment and kind of the need of each of these spaces. And then we moved the blocks around, which we also did with council, and that was really helpful to kind of test the phasing. And then at meeting 3, this was where we had the geotechnical engineer here and really kind of asked a lot of the geotechnical questions, which that's when we get to the cost. You see the significant driver of improving the soils down to 65 feet. And having them there and getting to have that discussion allowed the people that participate in this process really kind of understand those issues and the impacts. And then we narrowed it down to 2 options from this meeting, which then led to meeting number 4, which is the meeting we just had. And this one, we were able to do a detailing price of both options, as well as we had the comparable facilities, both in dollars and size. So the majority of this discussion, as almost everyone here attended, was very focused on cost and where the dollars were going in the project. So we got an opportunity to explain how we build the budget, what was going into each of the buckets, and then we have expanded on that based on your questions to provide more detail on the cost. So with that, I'll turn it over to Phil to walk you through the voting.
Yeah, so voting, we got 65 total responses, 35 of which were in person. 35 it was unanimous. They all saw the value in the consolidated option. And then we had the online voting results added. So this is summarizing them all. So we did have 10 votes for separated and then the remainder votes for consolidated on the online version. There were a couple paper entries in person that just said none of the options, but that really wasn't what we were asking. So it was a significant win for the consolidated option versus the separated option.
And that was as simply as what that survey asked, for those 2 questions.
It was a simple, yeah, choose one or the other. We did a feedback survey that went into a little bit more detail to get some feedback. But this exercise was just 1 or 2, option separated or option consolidated. There was no option for do not build a fire station, for instance. It was between these 2.
So the next couple slides cover cost and kind of the breakdown, but I guess I want to pause there to see if there's any questions on process, basically the last 6 months and the way the engagement process with the community.
No questions, but just a couple of observations. It's my recollection that before we even hired you, we had 4 town halls on our own without them. Was it 4? Where we discussed a lot of the questions that have now come up again. Why isn't combining with Seaside feasible? Why can't we just remodel the existing building? Why can't we do this and why can't we do that? We had a lot of conversations, and at the end of that, at the end of each meeting, as I recall, I remember you did kind of a, show of hands vote, and at each meeting, they said they believed that we needed, or at least at the final meeting, they said they believed that we needed to at least investigate a new building. Is that your recollection also?
I believe that is.
Okay, so that is how we came to be with you, and a lot of the questions that we're now receiving are already on the frequently asked questions sheet. Can I just, my observation is that whatever we do tonight, we take strong notes and we make sure it gets included in the frequently asked questions sheet. Okay, sorry to interrupt, go ahead.
No, that was perfect. So yeah, with Phil, you want to walk us through the latest breakdown, or Chris,
Yeah.
did you have a question?
No, sorry. Yeah, John, real quick. Is the poll, the voting, is that still open? And if so, when does that end?
No, that closed. So this is the final results.
Excellent. Thank you.
So John, we had 68 total votes.
Yes. Yeah, 68 people voted.
I think that's the same number of people that we've had at almost every meeting, either in person or online. So all these naysayers, as far as I'm concerned, if they didn't show up and give their input, even though they pay taxes in this town.
Yeah, physically, I think that's true. They were not there physically in the room. I think it was definitely, when we were just analyzing the comments, it was pretty apparent that there's a lot more understanding of the project, everything that you guys have been talking about. There was a lot more certainty of, I can make a decision. I have all the information I need. And then the online votes that people said that they either have only participated maybe in one community session and only participated online. They had more of these like bigger questions that Dana was just talking about.
Yeah, my takeaway from the survey results and process was the people that attended the meetings consistently really did have an understanding of the cost and size and kind of process that we went through in the outcome.
And our limited options. Why we'd already considered and set aside some of the things that they're wanting us to investigate again.
But these are the people that are really engaged in the future of Gearhart. I can't speak to the rest of the people that didn't show up.
Are you saying the 58 votes are the people who are engaged? Is that what you're saying?
I think that if you're a member of this community and you care about this community, then you should show up for whatever it is that we are doing, particularly when we're spending your tax money. And if you don't, then you're not engaged in the community. All you are just a complainer, when all of a sudden you're handed the reality of what it's going to take in order for us to have our own fire department and our own police department. What critical infrastructure really means. That's what I'm saying.
There was something that we read through in the comments that is a little different than the previous survey responses. A typical question we've asked is, how likely are you to attend a future session? And most of the sort of naysayers or people who are more negative would say, I'm sort of dismissing it. This was a change where there was a lot more people saying they were likely or more likely to attend a future session. And so that could be the 4th that we're talking about, where they can get to air out either questions or concerns. But that was a change in the survey results that I think is informative.
Okay. Well, I think the important thing is whether they have, you know, whether they should have participated and didn't, or now want to participate and whatever, we still need to give them the opportunity to have their questions answered, even if they're questions we've already answered. We've already created the frequently asked question thing, but I think the thing is, how do we continue to communicate with them? I don't know that more town halls are the best way to communicate with them, because again, some people are just, they're not gonna participate, and they're just waiting for us to put this on the ballot so that they can vote no. They're not gonna participate no matter what. But there are some people out there, if there are some people out there that still want to hear the answer to these questions, and it's gonna make a difference and help them understand why this is needed to protect their home values and their lives, then I think you know, to me, it's valuable, and I would participate in that. But I don't know that you folks should not be the ones that are explaining our need and how we got to where we are, because that puts you on the spot, and that's not your job. You have done your job. We identified a need to pursue this building. You did that. The only thing we need you to do is explain the money. And the money is important, don't get me wrong, but really why we need this building is even more important. And that's where I think our conversation going forward needs to focus. I think that's what we need to focus on, is what we need, why we need this. But certainly if somebody wants to be told why combining the seaside is not a good idea, I'll be happy to have that conversation with them, but I don't think that that's something that you folks need to do.
No, I happen to agree with Dana on that point. You guys have done a great job. It's concise, it's to the point, and I, for one, really appreciate it. And I think what it is that we need to go out and talk to the people in this town and find out the lay of the land. I mean, we've got 68 people that responded to our survey on the 4th town hall. We need to have a great big push to find out what the rest of the people are willing to do, and if they understand our situation. I don't know what it is, you know, I've never understood why someone would not want to be involved in a town hall. But we consistently have the same people, and everyone knows we need a new fire station. We're gonna have to do the walkabout Gerhardt and find out why they won't participate in these things. Anyway, that's mine. Not my job, it's my thought. I want to be clear on that. I will go out, but I'm not doing 900 people.
Do we have the wherewithal, like, if these same questions keep coming up and up, you know, up over and over? I mean, is there a way that we could like individually send an email back? I mean, I don't know how you got this information, Chad, about, you know, maybe it was just on these, but if there were other comments, is there a way that we could respond to them, like sending them a link to the FAQs that have already been published that answer their questions? Some way to individualize it, because I don't know if knocking on people's doors is gonna get us where we need to go.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in that, and the team and I have discussed this. And our plan is about twice a week to go ahead and take some of the most popular questions that have been circulating about and answering. So we did our first one on May 23rd, while you were out of town, and talked about what critical infrastructure is, how the ordinance plays out, and all that. So we've done that. The next one that we're working on, that I'm working on potentially tomorrow, and I'm gonna work with FFA on this also, is to try to take the building spaces and separate them out in cost, but also do an upload picture from 3,000 feet up, showing where our buildings are and why it is that this is a little bit more expensive, because we have to consider public works, we have to consider potentially city hall, the fire station, police station, and all of that, because during the firefighters ball, I actually had most of these comments and questions come to me. And I did a bunch of walkabouts with people, and they didn't even know that our machine shop and our water shop, where all the parts were, was even back there, or what it was for. So there's a lot of people who don't know that this is a working environment, especially back there. So we're gonna help explain to them that this is part of what's making this project more expensive. And at least educate people on what's there. So we wanna do that twice a week. This is a short week, I'm gonna get one out. And then next week, I'm gonna get two, the week after that, I'm gonna get two. And then anytime something comes up that's easy to answer, we'll just put it on the blog. And that way it gets out to almost 2,000 people. And it kind of combats the Facebook side of things as well, because there's no back and forth. We're just gonna stick to the facts, stay out of the, as we know, the facts, and then stay out of the emotion part of this. And allow Facebook to take information from our blog, which will also go out on his Facebook page with the police department and his Facebook page with the fire department, and hopefully answer a lot of those questions in a way that we can satisfy some of the curiosity.
Just information.
Yeah,
So our city blog is signed up by 2,000 people.
yeah, I think somewhere near there. Yeah, it's quite decent.
It's
1,935.
But Chad, that combines social media. There's 933 on the Facebook page, and then 1,002 are on the blog.
Yeah, so, well, I show 1,935 subscribers to our blog.
But that's what I'm saying is that number breaks out to 1,002 and then 933. It adds them together, unfortunately.
Oh, does it?
It does.
So WordPress.
We figured that out during
Facebook
COVID.
friends?
Yeah, 933 of that number is Facebook.
Well, I'll follow up on it, but.
Do we have any idea what percentage of those are voters?
No,
And how many voters do we have?
1,630 the last time I checked.
Up from 1,120.
And that's about how many votes we get on, especially on a big item like this. Typically, we get it around there, it can go higher or lower.
I think it was 900 last time.
I mean, would it serve the city to do a mailing to the voters?
well, one thing we are doing is I'm working with Peter, and we still haven't put the meeting together. It was maybe supposed to be this afternoon, if not tomorrow, with Paige Richardson, who is a owner of a company that does yeah, bowling, PR,
Communication, yeah.
public relations.
consulting.
And her and Peter have had many conversations about this situation, and she thinks she can help, and she would think that a good solid poll mailed out separately from the water bills and that was well constructed with questions would go a long way for us. And so we're hopping on that, but I don't have any more data about what that would cost or what that would entail, but we're working on it, and I'll report that back hopefully to you by the city council meeting.
So could we include FAQs along with that?
Yeah, I would defer to Paige as well, but I'll put that idea down. Put that in the idea bucket.
What if,
I mean, the reality is that the naysayers are never, ever going to advance what has already been asked. They just have their opinions already set out for them. Their minds are already made up. It takes an open mind, you know, to go through all this data that FFA has given us and the Klaus Group has given us to figure out what it is, the reason why the costs are. This, on the middle project costs 101, that graph there on the bottom is really accurate as far as what construction costs have been doing, and particularly since COVID. And anybody that can't see that is living in 1970 or 80.
Well, certainly the cost of this building is significant. Nobody's denying that. But also, I think for me, the conversation that is almost more important at this point, because if you need a new roof, you may not like the price of the roof, but you need a new roof. And you get a new roof, you figure it out somehow or another, because you know if you don't get a new roof, then you're gonna end up having to do drywall, and then you're gonna have to do, it's gonna lead to all other kinds of problems. And to me, we need to frame this conversation and get away from, the cost is the cost. And we did everything we could to reduce the cost, and they had an option they've had other options to vote for less expensive things, and they've turned that down. So while cost is an important conversation to have, we need to focus back on what do we need? We need not a new roof, but we need a new fire station. We need it. We need it.
Build it.
And although I agree with the polling, because one of my worst nightmares is that we all say, yeah, okay, let's go ahead and put it on the ballot, and it goes on the ballot in November, and then it gets voted down. That is, I mean, right now, this is a small hurdle for us to get over. That might be a much higher jump for us to get over if it gets voted down. So between now and then, yes, I do agree with polling, but my worry is that we have to be careful with the polling, because I do not want the polling to mislead people to think that we are communicating, well, do you want a fire station or do you not want a fire station? Because the question isn't whether you want it or whether you don't want it. I don't want a new fire station, but we have to have a new fire station. So we need a new fire station. So I think we need to focus on what we need, and we need to communicate more about this is your homes are not going to hold their value if you don't have good fire services, and if you don't have, and then part of that comes from the station being here, not only for the fire department, but also for the police department. We've explained all of the ways that their response times would be minimized and mitigated by doing this, and we need to concentrate on that. But whatever polling we need to do, I want to be careful not to say, well, do you want a fire station? Do you want a police station? And that we really, really explain, you need it. How likely are you to vote for it? Because, when I was a cop, I used to take crime reports for cases that I knew the DA wasn't going to file, and my partners would say, why are you spending so much time on that? The DA is not going to file it. And I would say, whether or not the DA files on this is not my concern. I'm going to do my job. I'm going to do what I signed a note to do, and then the DA can make their decision. And that's kind of the way I feel about this. I need to do my job. I need to make the best decision for me and for the public, and then give it to them, and then they will vote the way they want to vote. But hopefully we've done our job well enough to convince them we need a new roof.
I agree, Dana, but I also am a firm believer, and Peter has convinced me of this, and so have several mayors down there in Coos Bay talking about failed levies and failed bonds. They have to hit 70% affirmative in their polling before they'll take their bond to the voters, because you lose 15% at the ballot box.
Right.
And that still gives you a 5% leeway to win. And that is the biggest thing that's driving me. I want a poll that shows that we have got it. And then I'm all in as far as whatever it takes to get it done. But I really want the poll. I mean, Peter has talked about this for 6 years, about polling and getting that 70%. And Paige has been brought in. He's used her name before as far as doing a poll to find out where we stand. And if we don't have that, then we have to go and talk to people again until we do have that 70%. And, November is a good, a good aim, but if we have to wait, I would rather wait and get it passed than take it to the people and have them shoot it down and then have another failed bond. I don't wanna do that to these people. I don't want the morale of the fire department and the police department just to go, well, I don't wanna frickin' work here. You know, they won't even buy us a new station. I don't want that. So I need the poll. I am.
I'm not disagreeing with the poll, I'm just saying that I'm want to be cautious with the nature of the message that we send out.
Oh, I agree.
That, I mean, I do not want anybody to get the impression that this is just well, what do you think? Should we do it or shouldn't we do it? This is we need it, how likely are you gonna vote for it?
Right.
And what is it that we can do to, you know, to answer your questions, to help you understand why it's needed?
Exactly. What are your questions? What do we need to do?
Right, what answers do you need us to give you?
Especially if you're a no, what can we do to get you to yes? What is it that you need?
Right, what information are you missing?
Well, the perception is we're trying to build another Todd Hall. These two guys right here. I mean, we hammered them and I mean, there's wants and then there's needs. These guys, I mean, they come up with a wants list is, you stack those three screens together there, and that wouldn't even cover what their wants are. Okay, but their needs, we pared them down to exactly what they need according to the new regulations and the new, you know, whatever their agencies require.
Right,
And that's what this general public doesn't understand.
that very well could be a big part of it, and you know, that's just giving them the information, I mean, and if that takes us 6 months of giving them the information, that's what we gotta do. Because I want this. The first thing I did when I came on as a counselor, I asked Chad to get me a mold test on the fire station so I could start making waves about getting a new fire station. All I needed was some mold spores. I couldn't get them.
Couldn't find any, yeah.
But that's one of the first things I did. It's been long.
We found the text, but we couldn't find any mold, that is the issue. Yeah.
Right,
There's some asbestos and things that are over there, but I think more of it is structural.
right. Anyway, so that's my feelings on the subject in a nutshell.
I spoke to a gentleman who's an architect who recently, I think he's retired now, worked for Portland for many, many years doing large projects like this. And he said that after reviewing our town halls and going through all of the information that the architects and Klosh had put out, he said that he thought we'd done a very good job of doing the public engagement, which, you know, people are complaining about the price of things. One of the things that costs a lot of money is public engagement, because that doesn't come for free. But he said that we've done it, in his opinion, we had done a very good job at doing all of that, and he commended us for doing that. And I just wanted everybody to know that he thought that we were doing, he didn't have any argument with what the architects on this had said. He said, yeah, he thought this was pretty accurate. And what he told me is what you should tell people is that they should be embarrassed. They should be embarrassed to have people working out of these buildings and not stepping up to fix it up. And you should let them know how at risk their homes are, their property values are, and their lives are by doing this. Because even if this were to go on the November ballot and be passed, a minimum of 2 years before we're breaking ground, and then another year before it's completed, that's 3 years. Imagine this building in 3 years, how much money we're gonna have to sink into this building for 3 years and keep it going. It's just, why? That's just insane. And the people that want us to join up with Seaside and have Seaside, you know, for some reason, they think Seaside would be excited to join in on us and paying for our infrastructure. what's in it for Seaside, you know? Why would they want to do this, especially seeing all of the political conversations that have gone on about this? And then Seaside would be able to tell us or have a vote in where we put it and what it looked like and everything else. Why would we ever, you know, consider that? And we certainly, they couldn't service us from there, so we would definitely need to redo this building, only we'd have more paid staff, so it would have to be, you know, the people that think that what we're planning is too much for volunteers. For paid staff, you'd have to definitely provide all of these amenities, so you're talking about making a problem with infrastructure into a problem with infrastructure and staffing, coming up with that extra money, and somehow some people still seem to think that's the solution that's gonna lead to it being less money, and it's not. There's other people that have said, well, why don't we just do that 2.5 million grant? Well, I said that that station over there houses 1950 size fire trucks. What I didn't say is it was built in 1958 for 1950 fire trucks. In 1958, there were no standards. So you could build whatever size you want. In modern standards say, for this size fire truck, you have to have this much space around it. We're not even large enough for our 1950s fire trucks anymore. So we are now out of it. And even if we were to go with Seaside, we would still have to do that. That 2.5 million wouldn't even touch going down 65 feet, and we still wouldn't have solved our problem with our police department. And we just keep talking in circles with folks.
Plus the fact is, if we merge with Seaside, we're gonna be paying for their $2.25 per thousand bond
Yeah,
on a 5-year levy. That's what Joey's budget is, okay?
he just went back and asked for more people. He just got approved to get more staff, more paid
Yeah, right,
staff.
I mean, he's going to a paid department because, you know, nobody that's in business will let their employees go when the pager goes off. That's the reality of today's fire service. Even though for every paid individual in this state, there's probably 70 or 80 volunteers. State fire marshal doesn't give a rat about the volunteers. Okay,
Well, I don't know.
but the fact of the matter is, Joey Daniels works on a $2, somewhere between $2.15 and $2.25 per thousand just for his fire department. That doesn't include the police department, doesn't include public works, doesn't include anything. Okay, so if we merge with Seaside, and I was all in favor, you know, when I first started here, until I went and had a little chat with Joey.
Anderson, the gentleman from
You know,
fire
and I mean,
explained to us.
He explained to me that, you
Seaside would
know,
decide where those voters would decide where our fire station was, how much it would cost, and what it would look like.
and it would be a sub-state.
They would outvote us.
So, you know, I mean, I don't know what the ultimate answer is. I really don't, because I'm up against the wall. I just, you know, I have put my heart and soul into this and tried to listen to these guys, and understanding, being in the construction industry all my life, understand what construction costs are, what our conditions are as far as soils go, what critical infrastructure is. I mean, if there's a seismic event that's gonna create a tsunami here in downtown Dearborn, you know, those balloon frame houses up on the front are probably gonna be the only things that survive.
Well, let's talk, what do you think the solution is about,
Education.
okay, so how do we go about educating?
I think this is a good lead in, because I do think we're fixated, or there's a focus on the numbers and costs, right? And Phil has created a couple slides to help answer your questions that help break down the different lenses and way we can look at this cost, because there's the initial buckets that we showed at the meeting, right? That we showed the community this side of how we build it from the hard costs up. And then we have two pie charts. This pie chart that shows the total costs, and then the $8,400,000 that are associated with site improvements, foundations. So that's just that's the cost for the foundations and to improve the site and the deep soil mixing. And then the-
25%.
Yep,
So 20, so if I can't see really well, is this 25% of the proposed cost is going into the foundation and the site?
Right, and it's the site improvements, things that you can't see. There's another bucket for like landscaping and roads and sidewalks. So this is just structural ramifications.
Right, things that we can't get away from, even if we were to want to go in there and just, even if the state was insane enough to give us $2.5 million to bring a 1950s fire station, make sure that it wouldn't blow over in a tsunami. They won't do that, but just if they were insane enough to give us that money, 2.5 million would still not even cut it. And Public Works would still be affected because they're attached. And do you think that if we tried to detach that old building, that it would stand?
No.
Yeah.
Mark's the third leg of the stool. Yeah.
So, did you look into, and I'm not saying I'm a fan of this, I'm just, we're asking questions. If we were to extend out the period of the bond, are you looking into that?
I made the request, I haven't received anything back. Things are kind of slow after Memorial Day house, event, but, I put in a request to DA Davidson, I believe Kevin is his name. And, asked him for other options to reduce the, cost per thousand.
Yeah. Just,
And so I think that the longest bond that really out there is, I think, 40 years for that sort of thing,
yeah,
which would increase the interest quite a bit. And any other tools that he might have, I would expect if he's in the office, he'll get back to me by tomorrow.
And this is all based on 20 years, right?
This is all based on 20 years, which was the most cost effective, least amount of interest that, and the least amount of cost for the actual loan out of any loan, that is out there that we know of.
It's like buying a car, you know, I mean, years ago, you know, you financed it for 2 years. Then they got it, as the cars got more expensive, they financed it for 3 years. And all of a sudden it was like 60 months, right? Now it's
7 years.
7 years. And the cost is just going on, pick up $80,000 now.
Yeah, and I think I was talking also with FFA, last week, and we were tracking some of the May elections that had to do with some sort of public safety or infrastructure, and all of the small communities are hitting this reality at the same time we are. The expenses are so high, costs are so high that they're losing on these questions that they're answering, you know, asking their public. They're not getting these bonds approved and these projects approved.
So Chad, I just want to be clear, so you're saying that the 20-year bond is the best interest of all, everything?
Yeah, I believe there's some shorter bonds that would be available for the larger cities with bigger and deeper pockets and more people to pull from their taxes. The city of Deer, the most realistic was a 20-year bond, and that is the best cost. Anything beyond that, of course, both in interest rates, because your interest rates go up a little bit as you do bonds with longer terms.
Do you have any idea how much more the interest rate goes up?
No, I don't, but I'll get that answer here to you, probably by the, I would say 100% by the city council meeting. That and the information from Paige Richardson on surveys.
Thank you for breaking this down like this. This is helpful because I have received some questions about this also.
For the next slide, because this was another question, breaks it down. So we use the square footage. So the cost estimate is really based on the hard costs of the facility and built up the way the budget is. But this based on percentage, based on square footage, associates that cost between the 4 different departments in the consolidated option.
Yeah, and the one thing I would add within this is that we got the question during the community meeting about, well, why wouldn't you just do the fire station by itself? And the fire station by itself doesn't fit on this site. Once you try to put a new fire station on the site and deal with the phasing of keeping the existing fire station going, you automatically touch public works at a minimum. There's no other way to get the fire station on the property. And so that sort of ripples into all these other decisions that were made, not just by staff or by us, but the people who were involved in the community meetings, where it was like, well, obviously to get the most bang for your buck, you would include City Hall, you'd include obviously public safety, that was always, or police were always sort of a part of it. But there is sticker shock. I mean, without a doubt, you can't get around that. I think listening to the conversation you've had so far, you're not going to address the naysayers who have always been the naysayers. I don't feel like that should be your target. I think your target is the people who are in between. And for those people in between, it's going to feel like sticker shock because it is a higher price. And you have to sort of take the time to educate them as to why it's higher. It's the
And how it could go higher. It's not the highest though.
right. Absolutely. But you know, if to the mayor's point, if November's not it and you go further, you know, you go to May or you go to the next November, you got to keep that escalation in mind. It's 6% per year. So now you're sort of tacking that on as you go.
I think that moving the blocks around for these people, you know, when we had that public meeting and everything like that, I think that a lot of people realize that to keep the existing fire station and then build behind it, once you tore the existing down, that was all wasted space to the south. You couldn't do another thing with it.
Right. And recognizing that obviously the fire apparatus can't respond on First, they have to go on Pacific Way. Right. And so once you start to figure those things out and spend the time with it, which obviously people in the public meeting had, we have the costs are the result of the logical solution for the design. It's not that the architecture team or staff said, hey, let's spend as much money as we possibly can and make the biggest thing that we can. It's the reverse. These are the minimum set of criteria that we can do to make a functional fire station and public safety building. And then this is how much it's going to cost. And so making sure that people understand, I think the naysayers like to consider it in reverse, is that you were looking for spend as much money as you could, which obviously is not the case. And so you have to kind of take the time to explain to people how we got to this answer.
I had some questions about the facade that you put up. Some people don't necessarily like the look of the building.
Okay.
That is something, and I told them that was something that would be massaged out or could be massaged out in the final plans. These are just preliminary plans. Is that a correct answer?
It is.
I mean, the shape and the size of the structure will have to remain, but if you want to, you know, make it look, you know, with white trim, or if you wanted to make it look like it had craftsman columns, that all would be part of the next phase. That's not part of this phase. That wasn't your task. Your task was just to do what you've done, which is give us the preliminary, you know, this is a potential footprint and this is what it would cost.
Yes, that's true. The one caveat is that we're trying to keep the architecture not necessarily to the minimum, that's not the right term, but something that is simple and utilitarian, right? Because we were always concerned about that cost. Adding the additional accoutrements of, you know, we're going to put some Art Deco or arts and craft columns out front and some dormers on the top. We can do that. Absolutely. If that's the direction that the community feels fits most, we can definitely do that, but it's just added cost.
I think it's all about maintenance. You know, when we design this, we want to make sure that maintenance stays at a minimum. I realize Mark's only going to be here for 5 or 7 more years, but.
Well, we're kind of dealing with that as the water plant goes. I mean, this will be the 3rd time I've had to redo the south side as far as the state and everything on it.
Yeah.
So that's been over 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, this is a harsh environment.
Right.
Yeah.
So I always opted for core 10.
Yep.
Still might happen.
Citizens of Gerhart, that they want to see wood shingles that you have to replace every 15 to 20 years. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, when I first came down here and started shingling, I bought shingles and put them on for $100 a square. Now they're $250 a square just for the material.
While we're on this pie graph here, just to answer one of the questions that was asked before, I think you've answered this before, Public Works building, is it being built to critical infrastructure standards? No.
It is basically because that once you, and John and Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, but once you've sort of attached it to the building the way that we have, and the fact that that site is so close, we have to do soil amendments in a much wider area to be able to support the new building. And once you do that, you're already capturing public works within that. You're just going to do the whole thing together.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can I ask one question about the roof line? I know I vaguely remember you had some roof lines that were they had slight elevation, but were nearly flat. Someone asked me about flat roof for evacuation purposes. Can you remind me what our thinking was to not go that route?
John or Phil, you guys want to answer that one?
So with the consolidated option from the stairway, we have direct access onto the roof of Public Works, which is the height above the high tsunami line. So we do have a really large flat roof. You just can't see it within the two renderings that we presented. So that was the main consideration of providing a flat roof where it made sense, or flat-ish roof. It's not exactly flat. And then we articulated the public safety portion of the building that was public to fit within that vernacular that's there, which is a gabled look versus a flat roof.
Okay.
And John, wasn't there a comment from structural about what it meant to do like an area of refuge on
Right.
the?
So the building's designed to withstand a tsunami and be operational afterwards, especially the second floor, right? But if you do an evacuation zone, you are required ramps, access, and there's additional level of kind of structural analysis and requirements. So while the roof is designed to withstand a tsunami, it's not designed to occupy people on there and then provide the access in an emergency up to it.
I think if you look at the facility in Newport that OSU did, it's designed to have a whole lot of people standing on that roof, and it has a massive ramp to get everybody up to it. And it's a wonderful idea. It just adds more significant cost.
Okay.
I would also, one of my thoughts, I was thinking as we were going through this, is everybody talks about public works being non-essential, but really, if you think about every storm we've ever had in this town, public works are absolutely essential. And if we're gonna get our water system up and running again within our 2-week goal in our emergency response plan, they need to have some storage that is like you designed, that mezzanine, maybe where they can store some stuff. They have to be considered critical. I mean, yeah, we could throw them off the boat and say they're not as important, but really, how are we gonna do this without them afterwards? We need them. We're gonna need them. They are essential.
Yeah, I will tell you that most communities that we work with who are doing new public works facilities, they are being built to essential facility standards. It's not a code requirement, but they are.
Yeah, just because the state hasn't said that they are, doesn't mean that they're any less.
I think that's coming though. I think it's gonna happen.
I think they're teaching it in college classes and engineering that public works is what I heard of.
Can't live without water.
Man's greatest need.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any other pie charts?
That's the
Nope,
last
that
of
was
our
it.
slides.
I've got a couple of questions.
Okay,
If we can just do those today. One of the questions was if the community selects the combined solution, where does the police department go? You got some information, Chief Gregory, about that, or potential anyway?
Yeah, Chief Dave Hammond, Seaside offered up, room closet for us, anywhere we would like to be in the station, he's got room for us, so. He extended that offer, so whenever this comes, you guys are more than welcome to be at SPD during the duration of the build. And, just operate out of there. Obviously, the officers will still patrol the city and come back and forth, and when it's time to do paperwork, they'll just go to SPD and do the paperwork and respond to calls if needed.
we make sure you thank them for us.
Oh, I
please.
did
Do we have to
10
pay,
times.
we have to pay them rent? I mean,
I had mentioned, hey, we'll find a spot for you. So I mean, when this thing happens, I'm sure there may be some expense, but it would be at the most minimum cost, you'd be fine. Sure. If any.
Well, you guys respond over there a heck of a lot more times than they respond here.
You'd be surprised, sometimes at night, even when counting it with our contract, Seaside PD is still right next door. So if it's something that they can get to and they're not long down with calls, they reciprocate, they appreciate and we help them out, so
I think that relationship has gotten a lot better.
it's a very good relationship between us, very good.
We see that police a lot on calls, that fire calls at night. You come over the phone.
Chad, you got another question?
I do. So one of the residents said to me that the 30-some million is a tough ask, and that they'd be skeptical if the community was to vote that in. His question to me was, what would it take for us to remodel the current location? And I explained to him that there's a possibility of a grant for 2.5. I'm talking to an engineering firm about that because they keep ringing us because they must look for old fire stations and then look at us as some sort of potential customer for them. But a $2.5 million grant would be available to potentially shore up the foundation. And then it would also have a requirement for us to use that building for the following 10 years after that. Now, that being said, if we could get that money and go for it, seems to me that there's a lot of other things that we'd have to do to that building that would be quite expensive. If we were to add bathrooms, showers, decon, the adequate locker storage, build some walls, get the roof ventilation going so that we could suck out the exhaust system, male and female bathrooms, and some of the other things that we need. It felt to me with the 2.5 added in there, it would probably be another 5 million or so to try to get the building up and where it was working, and then that may work for another 10 years. Is that sound like it's in the realm?
You'd still have to go down 65 feet, wouldn't you?
Yeah, so I'm not sure, they're looking at the, what it takes for an existing building versus the new one, they're gonna look at that, and they have the geotech report. But to me, it sounds like we would be somewhere between $5 and $10 million just to retrofit the current building over there to make it stand up. And to give us the basic services.
And what do you do with the non-reinforced CMU walls?
Right. So the seismic grants, the 2.5 million, are pretty common for people upgrading fire stations. That is, but your soil conditions are not common, right? You're trying to get this thing to stand on sand. And so I have a hard time believing, I think, Chad, your estimation is probably not far off at a minimum. I can't imagine even how they would do it, right? Because you got to get under all that CMU, all underneath all the unreinforced masonry. You've got to support your slab in some way because that apparatus is going to be sitting on top of that slab, which is also sitting on top of sand. So you have to somehow get underneath all that to amend it. We'd have to really talk to the structural engineers and come up with a solution, but it seems it's definitely not a 2.5, and I think you're closer to 10 to 12. But I mean, don't quote me on that. We'd really want to do the homework and really check it, but it's
Yeah, that was a tough
spicy at
question.
best.
Well, and that doesn't even address, well, it doesn't address the police department problem, but it
Right.
also doesn't address the basic size. We should not even be operating per size, we should not even be operating out of that building right now. It's not right size. I used to, at one point in my career, I used to be given a stack of grants. The state of California wanted to give out grants and people would apply for them and they would give me the applications. They say, go through these applications. There's a scoring sheet. See how, read through and see how closely they meet the requests, the requirements, and score them. And one of the questions always on those grant applications was, will it be, or, you know, basically, are you gonna comply with all laws, federal, state, and whatever? And if you're gonna try and just make that building pretty and make it withstand a tsunami, you're still not making it a legal building because it's not gonna meet federal requirements for the size. And so I don't even think we would get that grant based on that alone.
Sure.
And if we made it bigger, then we're right back, we've circled right back to where we started this conversation. Now we're affecting public works.
Right.
And we still haven't addressed his problem. I just don't, I hate to see us wasting our money spending too much time on that. That is,
Yeah.
you're gonna waste a lot of money and find out that it's nothing. There's nothing there, there's no there.
There's also just one other component, which is that those existing walls that you have, they're crumbling. So it's not only a structural issue, it's an envelope issue, it's a weather tightness issue. So once you start tapping into it, there's not going to be much existing building left. It's all going to be new building.
Yeah, Seaside was upgrading a more modern building for sure.
Okay, is there any other questions?
These guys are spending their evenings here.
Yes.
Listening in. Mark, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions at the moment. I just, my only thought is just, I mean, we ought to be united front on this and go forward with it and just try to educate the best we can.
One thing I remember 3 years ago very clearly was Tom sitting in the audience. He and another member of the audience said to the council that it was a matter of urgency. And it was very compelling to me to move forward at that time because of that sense of urgency. And I want to be sure that we have that sense of urgency even more so now because of the building and because of the cost, the escalating cost.
Yeah. That gentleman I told you I spoke to from Portland today, he said, do you have a gun to your head? And I said, yes, we do. That's it right there. That cost, the way that they're continuing to go up, it's gonna become, if you think it's unaffordable now, think about how unaffordable it's gonna be. Or somebody gets hurt in the building.
I think I mentioned it in the meetings, but our best estimate at 6% is about $120,000 per month is what we're losing power.
The other thing that I did watch the fourth meeting online. And I believe it was Candace Smith. She made a statement about, well, she made several statements, but one that I'm thinking about is think about that you're doing this for your grandchildren. It really is a generational thing. For our family, it's my sister and I, we have limited years probably in this town or, you know, being alive or whatever you want to say. But I have a nephew and a son here too. And it's a lot for me about those younger generations.
Well, and I can't speak for Josh, but I'm sure he probably feels the same way, but I'm getting to the point where I'm not comfortable having my crew that camp. So it's not in good shape.
Yeah, when the engineer talked about the problems, and I think everybody in the room looked around and kind of went,
Yeah, exactly.
and made sure that they knew how many steps it was to the exit.
All these people have to do is just walk around your public works building, right? They can see where it was added on.
Yeah.
You know, on the west side there, and just take a look at at the condition of the walls.
I mean, there's spots you can put your arm in, so, I mean, it's, the spots that me and Mike didn't patch with mortar 20 years ago, so.
Somebody pointed out during the meeting that they had over the weekend, the homeowners, you know, I think it was it Fetty that was on the corner there who, yeah, he says, there are some of us that don't even look at computers ever. So for us to have these FAQs only on the computer is also problematic. I think we need to start posting them wherever we can post them. I think we need to have copies at the fire station during July 4th. The party, I think we need to have them wherever and whenever we can put them up at the post office. Whenever you do your update, make sure it gets posted at the post office and out on your front door and wherever else that they might see.
How about working with the Malarkeys in the store or Daughters or the coffee shop across the way or,
See,
you know, I mean, what few businesses we have in this town.
well, don't forget the ones on 101.
I agree.
And also, I think we need to communicate better with the folks that are in the rural fire district, because if we don't get this problem, it's our problem to solve. But if we don't get this problem solved, they're gonna be negatively affected, so they should be on part of they should be campaigning for this, really, what they should be doing.
Chief?
Yeah, I would say, I agree with Councilor Devereaux completely about the civic duty portion of this and communities that have to come together and understand the greater good. Sometimes it's expensive, sometimes it's not as easy to do, like your roof analogy. I think that showing up at these town halls, one of the reasons we have so many of the same people is because they have the time. And I lived over there for a little while. I had a home at Yard for 3 years before we moved out a couple of acres. And Josh was over there. When I was over on that side of the highway, I oftentimes felt like you're kind of the other part. And though the people that live on the other side of the highway, they're families. And they go to work, they're working every day, they got kids playing sports, you know, they've got kids in band. They're tired, they get done with their day, they just wanna make dinner, put the kids to bed, right? Those are the people that aren't showing up to a lot of these town halls is because they just don't have time.
Yeah.
And I feel like reaching out to those individuals over there, those families, is very important, that we're missing the mark on them. And there's a lot of homes over there and a lot of people that just need to be given that information in a different manner.
So what do you think is the best way to reach out to them?
Well, I think one way, you have to get creative. These are all people that work, right? And a lot of them are younger, they're on social media more. I know that it has to get to the point where if council agrees to start moving forward to say, yes, we want this on the ballot, and then some sort of act or something can be put together. My concern is I would love to go and talk to these individual families, and I don't mind answering questions or sitting down with people and talking to them. But when it comes from me, or it comes from Chad, and the directors, the directors of the city, we don't want to come across as salesmen. I'm not trying to sell something to someone, I'm trying to show them the facts and the reasons why this is important. And I think that's where the council comes in, play, where you guys have a greater force there to go and speak with these families, and really it's a win-win, because not only are you talking to them about this facility that we need, not one but need, you're also building a relationship with the constituents. Those are people over there that sometimes can feel like they're just not really heard. So using social media, look, everyone goes to work, everyone turns on the radio. You've got Jacob's Radio here in town that runs free public ads, right? They'll do it, if the police need to put something over the radio, they'll do a quick spot on the radio. Or they won't run it as much as all the commercials, but they'll run it. They'll give you a 30-second spot, and just advertise and say, hey, feel free to click on this link or say, just whatever, we can get creative. There's just ways that we can reach out to the newspaper. There's ways we can reach out to people.
Yeah.
We just gotta do the legwork, and this is exhausting, right? Like, we've been working hard with the people that were in the group in the beginning. It's a lot of work, and you've got a very transparent group that's really listened. And like, Councilor Devereaux said, we trim the fat, right? There's some very lean cross building, right? This is lean.
Do you think it would help if if council members went door to door?
It sure wouldn't hurt. But you would have to do it in the evenings. I really do feel that, because they're all at work, they're all doing their lives,
Or weekend?
right, or weekend, or weekend.
We did a lot over there.
We've
time.
been there, done that.
Yeah.
Good. And I'm not saying that y'all haven't, I wasn't trying to say like no one basically, I'm just saying that may be sort of the feeling that's there, and they might not even care, right? Like that's, they're so busy, they're not paying attention to it, and then all of a sudden they get this ballot. And it's asking for this big chunk of money, and they're like, oh my God, right, without really knowing what they're voting for. And that's where we get that, y'all weren't transparent enough in the process, but in the last one, we know we're being very transparent and trying to provide all the facts to anyone who will listen.
They've already got a bone they've got with, the west side of Gearhart. Cause they feel like I live over the swamp. I talk to my neighbors. But as much as I possibly can, trying to educate them, but yeah, further east than that.
Not one. Mr. President, you could be talking about raccoons over there being in the swamp.
All right,
Muskrats.
so anything else?
Let's see here. Nothing more from you guys. Any last words of advice, Ian, Bill, and John?
I don't think so. I think, like I said, you have to find the people who are in the middle, who are undecided, and make sure they're hearing the right stuff.
And there you are, Chris. I can see you now.
Well,
I think
thank you again for this.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Of course.
I think you guys have done a marvelous job. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So I know we're not supposed to vote, but I guess maybe I should just share my opinion that yes, I'm for the polling. I'm for careful polling. And if it's not clear, my expectation is that we'll pursue that. I don't know. Is that?
That will what?
That will pursue polling.
Yeah, I believe I'm gonna come back and report to you at the city council meeting.
Okay.
I'll have something by then, and I'll try to talk to you all before that meeting and what I've learned as well, so it gives you some time to absorb what they're talking about, what their ideas are, and how much it will cost. So I'll get that, and then I'll also get the numbers on the different types of general obligation bonds or loans. And then I've got a lot of information about things that we need to do, like updating the FAQ, getting it out, figuring out other ways around, not just on computers, but elsewhere. I've got a bunch of information I want to get, some of those graphs that you guys made, because tomorrow I'll do a post based on the segregated costs for the individual side parts of the building. I think that would be helpful for folks. I'll post the information that we already did the blog post on. I'll get that out to the post office, the city hall, and maybe some of the businesses as well. We'll go by the businesses, whether or not they put it out. So poll. Gearhart families across the way. Updates go out everywhere. Rural Fire Protection District involvement. Don't just concentrate on computers, try to get it out other ways. We talked about the matter, this is a matter of urgency. I don't know if there'd be any, really promoting this video for people to see. The work session that we just had and the conversations that we're talking about. We can consider that as well. Yeah, so those are some of the things that we're gonna be working on. In the meantime, we're gonna try to communicate a lot harder than we ever have before, because we're up against quite a powerful and well set up social media machine that we're having a hard time communicating with. So maybe if we start feeding some information to them a little bit better and get them the facts, then at least they can disseminate that out and have a debate. Not saying that we're gonna change their minds. And a couple of the people that were not is positive about this project, you know, and are heavy on social media. They were in that meeting. But it didn't seem to have much effect. The information came out, they saw it, and then they chose to report on the emotional aspect of it. So I'm concerned about that, but we'll keep pushing as far as we can.
We have to remember that there's no obligation to, if you are a registered voter, there's no obligation for you to sign up for any of our social media. And I taught a class, or I was taught a civics class about a month ago, and they said, why are you even wasting your time with Facebook anyway? Nobody's on Facebook. They told me I should be on TikTok, and there was something else that I've never even heard of yet. So, you know, so we have to keep it in perspective. We also have to remember that, I actually personally think the last couple of times that they've analyzed some of our meetings, they've actually done a somewhat fair and objective synopsis. The comments down below are from the same 10 people over and over and over again, and that it turns into, it looks like 47 and it looks like it's a whole, but if you really break it down, half of them are saying, well, if I still lived in Gerhard, I would do this. So they're not gonna be our voters. And then there's, you know, the other people that just keep commenting over and over and over again. So it looks like a lot, but it's. So I'm not saying that we don't take it seriously. I'm just saying that we don't become disheartened or we don't rely on it. We don't allow that to be our guide. Is I guess really what I'm trying to say.
Okay. I'm gonna call it because we've got people here that don't need to be here. They need to be home.
Good evening.
Gotcha. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, Martin. Other documents that run?
Yeah, just got called.
Okay.
Yeah.